Hello, fellow trumpeters and musicians. My name is Josh Rzepka, and today is Mute Monday. Before we get started, I have created a free mute guide for all of you that will help you take your mute game and your playing to the next level. I discuss all of the different types of trumpet mutes, and I put a whole bunch of tips and tricks in there to help you play better immediately. If you'd like to download this free mute handbook, click the link below or go to joshrzepka.com/mute handbook. Fill out the form, and I will send this handbook directly to your inbox. Today, I am very excited to be sharing with you 4 terrific mutes. 3 of these mutes are vintage mutes, and one of them is a little bit of a revisit. The Soulo Harmon mute that we checked out a couple weeks ago, well, apparently there is a newer model, and I am very excited that I have got that with me today. So we will be checking out the following 4 mutes. First off, we have the Bobby Shew Soloist mute. This is an incredible Harmon style mute. People really dig this mute. They are very rare, very difficult to find, and if you do find one online, expect to pay a lot of money for it. Second up, we will be checking out this incredible Buzz mute. This is the AP&M Buzz mute. Look at that. It looks like a Harmon mute, except the cork is very, very different, and it's kind of like a shower head at the end. It's got all these holes in it, and on the inside there is a membrane that buzzes. Really cool sound. This is by far my favorite Buzz mute. The third mute that we're going to be checking out today is this vintage Harmon cup mute. Check this out. This is from the 1920s or 1930s. This is a very old cup mute, and I'm very happy to have this today to be able to play for you. And then that fourth mute is, of course, the Soulo Harmon mute. Here we are. This is the updated version. The one that I shared a couple weeks ago, I bought when it first came out. I got it at the ITG conference in Anaheim, and that was 3 years ago. And since then, they have updated and tweaked a couple things with this mute, and now it plays even better. So I am very excited to be sharing this new Soulo Harmon with you. Going back to this Bobby Shew Soloist mute, this is such a great and unique Harmon mute, and I emailed Bobby Shew, and I'm very thankful that he sent me a whole bunch of information about this mute that I can share with you. I'm going to read from his email just because it is such awesome information. Now, this is information that comes from Bobby Shew and Terry Baylor, and they really created this mute. And Terry helped Bobby develop this mute. He was a student of his years ago, and I guess he was crafty, and he created the soloist mute with Bobby. Listen to this. This is really very, very cool. So Terry writes, "Bobby, on my first lesson with you, you showed me how you were loosening up the parts of a Harmon mute to get the subtle buzz that you were looking for." Bobby commented on that, and he writes, "You are correct regarding the loosening of the 2 parts of an old emo aluminum mute. I learned this from trumpeter Pete Fontaine." He then went on to write, "Regarding the sound, too many Harmon types of mutes had a dominant metallic sound that made me cringe. The idea was to find a way to warm the sound by opening up a broader set of overtones, something that took away that thin, pinched sound that came from the metal. And that is why this particular mute has got a very heavy gauge of metal. This is actually 20 gauge metal, 0.032 inch. That's what was emailed to me from Terry Baylor, along with this other interesting information. You and I had decided to have them made from copper and soldered together to ensure the possibility that any buzz wouldn't come from vibrating metal. I soldered one set of parts together, put the cork on it, and tried it. We were on the right track. You came to my shop and we spent the day playing and making changes to the mute. After melting the solder to separate the parts, I respun them and put them back together. After several cycles, we got the sound you wanted. I finished off the other 3 sets and we ended up with 2 mutes each. No thoughts of producing the mute at this time. After you play the mutes on recordings and personal appearances, you received such interest that I started producing the mutes in small batches. And then he goes on to say, the mute is made from soft copper, 0.032 inch in thickness. The sound is the result of turbinating the airstream rather than the metal vibrating against each other. It has the same character of sound throughout the range. Very, very cool information. And here's a little bit more information from Bobby. He writes regarding the name of it. We called it the Soloist because its best function was for a soloist in a close microphone. This mute was too dark to match the usual brighter sound for section playing unless everyone in the section was using the same mute. He then adds that they made just a couple thousand of these mutes. And regarding the mute being soldered together, to my knowledge, this is the only mute that is soldered together instead of crimped. Now, if you look at it, look up close, it looks as though it is crimped. However, if you look at this seam right here, it is actually soldered all the way through. And if you look up close, it's got a nice big thick cork at the top. And then on the bottom, look on the inside, check that out. Do you see how there is a little bit of tube sticking out? Does that remind you of anything? Do you remember in last week's video where I talked about the different Harmon mutes and how the original Harmon mute, you could take the funnel, the cup off of the stem and put it inside, and how it improved the playability of the mute and the response? Well, that is exactly what they did here. And this is such a cool and unique mute, and I'm very excited to be demonstrating it in just a couple minutes. Now, up next is this very interesting and unique mute. This is from AP&M. And if you've never heard of that brand, well, that's because they haven't made trumpet mutes in about 70 years. Look at the cork configuration along the bottom. Very cool. 3 separate corks, which allows air through in between them. And that's because even though this has got all these holes on the end, there's actually a membrane inside there and it doesn't let any air through. So you can't really see inside, but if you could see directly inside of this mute, you would be able to see that there is a membrane, and it's the same as the Buzz Watts, the same as all these other Buzz mutes. It's like a kazoo basically. It's wax paper, it's some type of material that's inside there that vibrates and creates this buzzing sound. So this is basically, it's like a Harmon mute, but instead of there being a hole and a tube, it just has all these holes drilled in the bottom, and it's very, very interesting. And this says Aristocrat on it, AP&M. Now the AP&M company, they are based here in Chicago, and the history of that company goes all the way back to 1902. Originally, they were focused on repairs for buggies and carriages, and that morphed into instrument repair and parts. By the 1930s and 50s, they were making trumpet mutes, mouthpieces, and lyres, and the trumpet mutes ended up being phased out, and they are now one of the leading global manufacturers of ligatures and lyres. Very cool that they were able to stay in business in the music industry, going on now nearly 120 years. Now, speaking of a company that has been around for a long time, the Harmon Mute Company. Last week we talked about all of their different Harmon mutes, and they have a full line. They have cup mutes, they have straight mutes, they have plunger, they have so many different mutes, but this is a very unique and very rare vintage cup mute, and I'm very excited to have this. This was loaned to me actually by the Harmon Mute Company, and check this out. This it's got a very cool label on it. The cup of this mute is actually made out of metal. There's no felt or foam or anything on the inside, and it's not adjustable, but this is a great vintage cup mute, so very happy to be able to share this mute with you. I was told that this mute was probably made in the 1930s, so this is a 90-year-old cup mute. Very, very cool, and I'm very excited to be able to share it with all of you. Now, last but certainly not least, of course, this Soulo Harmon mute. And I told you that there were a couple of updates that they made to this mute, and I got a little bit more of the backstory about this mute, so I would like to share all of that with you. Now, as far as the new changes are concerned, you can see on the top, check that out, there is now a foam on the top as opposed to the cork, and that is much like the emo mute. It's got this foam to it, and I really like that because I think that it sticks in the bell a whole lot easier. It's not going to fall out. Some of the new mutes, especially the new cork on them, it's very slippery and it's difficult and tough to get it to stick in your bell. The composite cork, that fake cork that they put on some of the mutes, I haven't been the biggest fan of that. And I do like how there is foam on this mute now. Now the other two changes to this mute, the first one is the stem on this mute. This is a brand new stem. The original stem that I got was actually 3D printed, and this is injection molded, very shiny, looks sleek. It functions great, just the same as the old one. Now, there is a new piece. This is the exciting part about this mute. They created a little insert. Now, let's just go back a few minutes. I was talking about that Shew Soloist mute, and there was that little piece of metal tubing that was inside, sticking out a little bit. And then I mentioned about the old original 1925 Harmon mute, where you could play it with just the stem and without the cup. Well, that's a little bit of what this little piece of plastic is. Check that out. This little piece of plastic right here goes inside of the mute, just like this. And you can see that it fits in there perfectly. And what this does is it helps solidify the sound and the articulation, and it really works great. So I'm very excited to be able to demonstrate with and without this extra little piece. I don't know if he has a name for it, but to my knowledge, this is the only Harmon mute that has this little piece, and that comes with a little attachment that you can put inside. So a big kudos to Mike Giroux and to Soulo Mute for continuing to innovate and creating this great little extra piece to go with the mute. Now, I had a chance to speak with Mike this last week, and I asked him a little bit about the inspiration for the Harmon mute and what he was really trying to go for. And immediately the first thing he said was Miles Davis as far as inspiration on sound. But then he elaborated and he said he was really trying to find a mute that cut and played in tune and projected well in a section, but also that played equally well close to a microphone in a recording session. And I think he's done a fantastic job with this mute. Of course, so many people are using and endorsing this mute, so that speaks a lot to the success of what he has been able to achieve. An interesting tidbit to throw in there, he told me just a couple months ago he finally received his patent. This process often takes years, so he was very excited to have just gotten that. And it's very cool to be able to research and see the patents that are out there and the way that things are designed. That's how I get some of my information about these mutes. All right, I think that is enough talking. I am going to get into some playing right now. First up, we are going to hear that Bobby Shew Soloist mute, followed by the AP&M Buzz mute, the Harmon Cup mute, and finishing off with the Soulo Harmon mute. And I'll be playing that with that little piece inserted and with it taken out back to back so that you can hear the difference and really hear what all of this innovation does to the sound and articulation. Without any further introduction, here we go. So how about all of those mutes? Very, very cool to be able to play those vintage mutes and that new Soulo Harmon mute. Just all of them are so unique and interesting in their own right. That Bobby Shew Soloist mute, wow. There's a reason that so many people love this mute, and there's when you try and find these online, if you find one of these on eBay, it might sell for $200, like that. In no time at all. People love these mutes, and they didn't make very many of them, just a couple thousand, and they have been out of production for decades. So good luck finding one, but if you can find one, you've got something special on your hands. Now, that AP&M Buzz mute, this is absolutely by far my favorite buzz mute that there is out there. Nothing quite plays just like this mute. This plays, I mean, the intonation on this, the response, the evenness of the buzz throughout all the registers, spot on. This is an awesome mute. I really wish that someone made one just like this, because I think that there might be a use for it. All of the other buzz mutes that I've played, the Buzz Wow, other little ones that I found, none of them come even close to this mute. This one really plays terrifically. And it's so cool because it gives you this new idea of what a trumpet sound could be, and it's just such a unique color to the sound. Now, that Harmon cup mute, what a great vintage mute, and I'm so glad that I was able to finally play one of these, and they were making a great cup mute, and they are currently making a fantastic cup mute. I'm gonna get to that in a couple of videos. I've got their newest cup mutes, and they are terrific, so I will be very excited to share that with you in a couple weeks. You will hear that they are just continuing to do a fantastic job with cup mutes. And the Soulo Harmon mute, well, what can I say? It is a terrific Harmon mute if you're looking for one. I just love how the two pieces of this, the aluminum on the bottom and the copper on the top. Of course, in that first video, I discussed how they have a special process that crimps the two pieces together, and that allows for the airflow inside to be less disturbed, and it allows it to not vibrate. Just so many great things going on with this mute. The new additions with the foam and that little piece on the inside, just terrific. So again, congratulations, this is a great mute. And a big thank you to Soulo Mute for sending me this newest version so that I could share all of the new updates with all of you. Now, next week, we will be talking bucket mutes. I haven't reviewed any bucket mutes yet, and I have got a couple to share with you. Some of them are very old, and some of them are brand new, so you can look forward to that. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click that button below And if you enjoy this video, please give it a like and a thumbs up. That would really help me out a lot. And of course, if you have any questions, write them down below in the comments. I try and answer as many comments as I can in all of these videos. All right, I will see you next week.